About to share with you comes from the Rockefeller Foundation, and credit to Dave C. for sending me this. Scenarios for the future of technology and international development. I'm going to skip down. By the way, this report was produced by the Rockefeller Foundation and the Global Business Network in May of 2010. I'm going to skip down to page 18 and just read a few paragraphs and tell me if what we're seeing today isn't pretty much what they wanted all along. Page 18 starts, lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Remember, this was written in 2010. They write, in 2012, the pandemic that the world has been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months. The majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet, though disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the U.S., but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. Now remember, guys, this is just fiction. It's a projection written in 2010. They say the Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus from earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics to transnational terrorism, to environmental crises and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Friends, I cannot stress enough how important a document like this is. It's truly a smoking gun of what we've been warned by Aaron Russo and others is coming. It's part of their plan. We've known it forever. How were they going to get it? It turns out a pandemic is the perfect way to garner more unilateral, unchecked power. Back to the document. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms: biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries whose stability was deemed vital to national interests. In many developed countries, enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements slowly but steadily restored both order and, importantly, economic growth. So again, let's just review what's happened so far. A virus has been released, whether by accident or on purpose. You decide. Many have pointed to evidence that it is a bioweaponized virus, so more deadly than it otherwise would be. Whether that's true or not, you decide. But the end game is more unilateral power, more unchecked power and more control by the government, by the corporations, and I would note, more bailouts for the banks. Now again, friends, that was from the 2010 document from the Rockefeller Foundation.